Well, we've reached the darkest point in the road for Marathon, the apex of doubt, skepticism, and fear, the point where saying "I told you so" just sort of feels cruel and pointless, and all the warning signs were there, not just for Bungie internally as they ignored feedback for 5 years about their game, but the warning signs were there for the public as well, and they chose to ignore them, and I can't fault them for that. Gamers, the gaming press, and content creators did something that I kind of understand. They had hope. Hope that a company with Bungie's history would somehow pull this off. Hope that all the promises and hype weren't just thin veils draped over a hollow project. They had hope that Bungie had actually turned around their toxic work culture and that all the rumors about Marathon and the leadership were just that, rumors. But in the span of about 2 weeks, it's become pretty clear. All hope is lost. This project is more than doomed. It's become a blemish and a look inside of Bungie. It's like this giant looming shadow that's created an ocean of questions. And right now, nobody seems to have any good answers. Just the other day, I suggested that, well, Destiny 3 is their only way forward. They're too big, their operating costs are too high. That's the only way they can really justify their existence. And it would need to be funded by Sony and restructured and get the leadership out of there. But even that feels like a pipe dream now. How can a company that is so clearly dysfunctional be put on a path of redemption? How can a studio with such inept and toxic leadership figure out a path forward? Recent developments are actually pointing to Sony taking action. But what does that mean for Bungie's future? And where do we go from here? So before I get into this though, if at any point during this video you like what you hear, remember to hit like and subscribe so you can get more of my content. So if the developments up to now were not enough to give you more than pause about Marathon, now you'd be hard-pressed to really scrape together a positive outlook about the game. We've gone from, concerns about marketability, popularity of an extraction shooter in a very saturated live service market, to now everybody's just sort of waiting for the proverbial guillotine to drop. And just so you're up to speed, a lot has happened. I mean, a lot. It all started, I think, with the game director saying, well, the game's not for everyone. It was like one of their first videos, like a dev diary sort of thing. And I remember when I saw it, I thought, wow, I mean, that's not much of a sales pitch for your game. And then the showcase wasn't much of a sales pitch either. It was met with negativity and lukewarm reception. And I said at the time that it didn't really feel like Bungie. And if you go back and watch the showcase now, in light of everything that we've learned, it makes a whole lot more sense. They weren't just nervous because, the concept's crazy, or the game is big, or what if it's not good? What if nobody likes it? No, they were shaken. They were rattled. I think they were nervous because they knew they were showing the world an alpha. They were showing the world a minimum viable product. This is Bungie, the makers of Halo and Destiny, coming to market with an alpha, and they had to know that it was very much not going to go well. And the reception prompted a Hail Mary. They make their alpha public, and that doesn't help. The player numbers are bad, the streaming numbers plummet very quickly, and it just leads to piles and piles of feedback. The casuals aren't really vibing with the game. Fans of extraction shooters have just laundry lists of issues and just basic features that seem to be missing. Bungie just clearly doesn't know what they're doing. I mean, during their AMA stream, they seemed behind. It's like not even really thinking through solo queue. How are you just now thinking like, well, we're going to discuss that? You're so woefully out of touch with how consumers are going to engage with a game like this. And all of this is sort of, topped off by the art theft, the AMA stream, which was a disaster, and just the aftermath. In the wake of all of that, the public and sort of the YouTube content circuit, it just doesn't look good for this game, which I think is prompting a response here. Sony appears to be pulling the plug, and when you look at the details, it could spell trouble not just for the game of Marathon, but for Bungie as well. So in case you missed it, in the wake of the art theft and that train wreck of a live stream, a lot has changed. Bungie actually had to adjust some of their plans, which is completely understandable. The scope and the reach of the stolen art is far more significant than they tried to make it, and they tried to really downplay that and minimize that. But removing all of that from the game and the marketing materials, well, that's going to take an awful lot of time. I'm not even sure what kind of an agreement they can come to, given how a lot of the artwork and the style and the influence is in trailers, posters, banners. It's kind of all over the place. It's not just in the game, it's in stuff that's in view of the public right now. But that's beside the point. The point is, they already had to make some significant adjustments, and I pulled this from thegamepost.com. Quote, Bungie pushed back its marketing and pre-order plans that were supposed to go live in June, and the big open beta was replaced with public playtests. Okay, that's not the latest development. The latest development's even bigger than that. That's just sort of like the preamble to the next thing. Okay, because the next thing, PlayStation's getting involved, which doesn't really bode well for Bungie or this project. More from the same article. Now, a new report claims that Sony has canceled all paid marketing plans for Marathon. This information comes from Colin Moriarty, who shared the news on his latest paywalled episode of the Sacred Symbols podcast. This reportedly came from someone familiar with the marketing efforts in an overseas market and is, quote, considered a fairly unusual move for a game of this high profile. Now, I could see this resulting into a couple of things, and even Colin seems to think that there could be a variety of reasons. He was quoted as saying the following: I was told by someone familiar with marketing plans in key overseas market that there are now no plans to do paid marketing for Marathon at all. I don't know if those plans were affected by what has recently happened, or if that was always the plan, or whatever, but it is considered a fairly unusual move for a game of this high profile. Now, given how significant this shift in the plan is, I think some of my own predictions are about to come to fruition. I've said for a while it's going to get delayed and then just indefinitely shelved. It'll be like the quiet cancellation of the game. Now, that honestly leaves us with only, I think, a few possible outcomes here. The first thing we have to say is that it is undeniable this game is headed for disaster, okay? That doesn't mean that the journey to get there is over, though, okay? Do they cancel the game? Do they delay the game? Do they delay and then cancel, which is what I keep saying is going to happen? Given the recent developments with Sony, though, I do see three possibilities, and the first of those possibilities is that all of the marketing was canceled simply because they can't push any of it out. It all needs to be combed over. There's stolen artwork basically everywhere, okay? People have tried to minimize this. You Bungie Defense Force guys have got to let this one go. Take the L. They stole, it influenced a ton of the art direction, and it is pervasive within the game, okay? That would mean they can't go forward with anything. And they're still planning on shipping the game with its intended launch date, right? This is just possibility number one. Whatever state the game is in right now, it likely wouldn't change that much. They've got a list of just all these things they need to do. A lot of them sounded like discussions, not even actual changes they would be doing. Even in their own stream, they were like, yeah, you know, we've talked about that, we're discussing that. It didn't seem that conclusive. It seemed like some of the stuff would be showing up way down the road. So possibility one is that they're planning to hit that ship date, but all the marketing's been canceled because they have to rip all that stuff out. But after Concord, I don't think PlayStation's going to want to allow that. If they're in a position to stop this, that leads to possibility number two. They've canceled all the marketing because they're going to give the game a hefty delay. Now, this is something that both parties don't want, but for very different reasons. We have it on pretty good authority at this point that Bungie leadership is completely checked out. They're ignoring feedback, they're coasting to that final payout from Sony, and they just want to get this thing out the door. And PlayStation would prefer canceling, I would think, over delaying at this point. Just rip the Band-Aid off now. Okay, PlayStation has bigger plans than Bungie. They've got marketing of big releases in 2025 coming up. And you certainly don't want Marathon's corpse just drug into 2026, so it just continues to kind of hang out. You're just sort of elongating the stench into a whole nother year. Do you really want to be promoting games with big budgets and big potential sales with that black cloud of Marathon just sort of lingering in the air? This leads to the third possibility, okay? This game is just canceled, and they really haven't announced it yet. It feels like a dead man walking. I could see the art theft and the AMA stream being the last straw. You know, public perception about the game couldn't really be any lower. Public perception about the company, I don't think could be any lower. And for a live service game, that is catastrophe. I mean, after Concord, PlayStation has to be pushing at this point, I would think. to just get this thing into the dustbin and just forgotten. Because we're about to enter showcase season. And recent info and reliable sources about Sony events has indicated they're going to be doing something in June, and that's when all the announcements and all the showcases happen. And other sources have pointed to Sony doing something pretty big in September. So let's just say all those insiders have good info, okay? Does PlayStation really want to be doing some sort of an event in the summer with this just hanging in the air? Do they want to be doing a showcase in September? That's the month that Marathon is going to limp across the finish line and just die seconds later. Like, is this what they want to do? I don't think so. I don't think PlayStation wants Marathon in the air at all. I feel like just this week, like right before we get into June, that's the time to kill it before you let it hang out any longer. You're just sort of stretching it out. You're just elongating the damage at this point. Even the most ardent fans and supporters have just turned on the game, so why ship it at this point? Which I think just begs the big question. Where do we go from here? Look, there are times where being right doesn't really feel good, like when you tell your kid they're going to get hurt and then they do get hurt. Like, it's not fun, you feel bad. And given my history with Bungie, you might think that this would be a great time for me to be sort of gleefully gloating and taking victory laps, but it's honestly just sad. Watching a company that has postured and positioned itself as a champion for good falling so far from what it once was, and seeing a studio that seemingly pulled off the impossible. They launched a live service game before it was even a common concept, and they did it with two really bad launches. Destiny 1 and 2, their vanilla launches were basically terrible. I mean, some would call them failures. Even after all of that, the franchise and the game somehow survived. 10 years of near-death experiences, highs, lows, and everything in between. And now, it's like an old vacant house that you grew up in. It just holds memories and not much else. Meanwhile, you're watching Bungie set their sights on everything but Destiny, as well as gamers. I mean, they're more interested in payments from Sony. They're more interested in retirement. And a live service game that's basically just an alpha drenched in mediocrity and stolen art. This is just going to leave the studio in what will likely amount to a rubble heap that Sony has to sift through. And listen, I get it. All good things must come to an end, but not like this. If folks wanted to retire, then just do that. If you wanted to be done with Destiny, then just do that. It honestly is starting to feel like a bit of a scam at this point. And I still stand by what I've said in the past. I still think Bungie's live service advice is worth having. I do still think they saved Naughty Dog from making a huge mistake. They thought they could just ship that game and it'd be great, and Bungie's like, no, you're gonna have to basically become a live service studio. Over the years, Bungie wasn't even able to support their game by themselves. They had multiple studios at one point helping them maintain Destiny. Imagine trying to launch a live service game which is like a slice of your single party studio, your single player studio. Listen, they know better than anybody what success looks like, what slowdowns look like, what failure looks like in this environment. But setting that aside, what they know about live service, what they could bring to the table for anybody trying to do live service, Sony has to be seriously considering what to do now. Because it looks like they're going to be holding the shell of a company by the time those last payments hit in 2026. And the leadership and top levels at Bungie are just going to ride off into the sunset like the toxic cowards that so many of them are. That'll just leave, I think, layoffs and financial ruin very likely in their wake. I mean, it just doesn't really seem like there's a path back here for Bungie. Destiny 2 continues to decline. Demand for the game goes down, which means money coming in from the game goes down. And now their reputation and consumer confidence, it's just been driven into the ground, which is why I said all hope is lost. Not just for Marathon, but for Bungie as well. But those are just my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you leave a comment below, I try to reply to as many as I can. And always remember to hit like, share, and subscribe so I can see you in the next video.